She knew every word to every song. She lifted her hands at exactly the right moment. She closed her eyes when the bridge came around. The person in the row behind her assumed she was one of the real ones. She assumed the same thing about the person standing directly in front of her. The service ended, they filed out, and nothing had moved. Not one thing changed inside either of them. That is not what most people picture when they hear the word lukewarm. Lukewarm is supposed to look careless, obvious, and easy to identify from across the room. But the person Jesus warned about in Revelation 3 was not skipping church. They were attending faithfully, giving regularly, and serving on schedule. They had the vocabulary, the attendance record, and every right answer. And Jesus said he would rather they were cold. Let that settle before moving past it. That is how serious this is. Everyone reading this has met someone who fits that description. Most people reading this attend the same church as that person. Most people reading this were that person earlier today. Jesus did not call this person lost. He called them something harder to recover from. He called them lukewarm, and he meant every syllable of it. And in Scripture, lukewarm does not mean weak faith or young faith or struggling faith. It means faith that has settled into a condition it no longer wants to leave. There are 5 levels to how that happens. Most believers are already at level 4 and have no idea. This is exactly where it starts. Level 1. He has not missed a Sunday in 4 years. He tithes automatically from his phone, before the plate even reaches his row. His Bible app has a reading streak he is quietly proud of, and none of it has cost him a single uncomfortable thing. That is the first symptom of lukewarmness. Comfort is not the reward for mature faith. It is the first warning that faith has gone still. When following Jesus stops requiring anything from you, it has stopped being following. And the scariest thing about that shift is how gradually it happens. You know what it looks like. The prayers get shorter, the Bible gets opened less, and the conversations with God become functional rather than real. Church becomes the thing you do on Sunday, not the community you belong to. Before your mind goes to someone you know who fits this description perfectly, stop. You are not watching someone else's story right now. The danger of level 1 is that it feels like stability. It feels like you have finally found your rhythm with God. But comfort in the Christian life is not a destination. It is a slow and subtle detour. Here is where it gets heavier. The moment faith became a routine instead of a relationship, something started dying inside it. Jesus walked out of a grave to make sure you would never have to settle for a routine in place of a resurrection. He did not bleed and rise so your faith could find a comfortable altitude and level off. Comfort is not the end of your journey with God. It is the first sign that you have quietly stopped walking. Nobody announces when that moment arrives, and almost no one notices it when it does. And the question level 1 asks is simple. When did faith stop costing you anything, and why did you stop noticing? Level 2. She leads the women's Bible study on Thursday mornings. She posts scripture on her social media every few days. Her public faith is intact, organized, and completely visible, and her private life is quietly moving in a completely different direction. Paul wrote in Romans 1 that people who knew God chose not to honor him as God. They did not abandon the language of faith. They abandoned the surrender that gives the language its actual weight. The split life is not just hypocrisy. It is a slower and more deliberate form of rejection. You maintain the appearance because the appearance still benefits you. Do not let your public record exempt you from this one. This is not about the person who walked away from the church. This is about the person who stayed and brought a second life quietly in with them. You carry a public testimony and a private conversation that are pointing in opposite directions. There is a relationship in your life that would end the ministry role if anyone found out. What about the content you consume when no one is watching, or the unforgiveness you have quietly renamed something else? Revelation 3 verse 1 says, "You have a name that says you are alive." Jesus looked at the same church and said they were dead. Not declining or struggling or going through something difficult, but dead. Here is the part that is hardest to say. The most spiritually dangerous condition is the one that looks completely fine from the outside, because the appearance gives you permission to keep going without changing anything. Jesus appeared first to Peter, who had publicly denied him 3 times the night it mattered most. The double life did not disqualify Peter from the resurrection. It was exactly what the resurrection came to address. The split ends one of 2 ways. Either the private life surfaces and reshapes everything, or the gospel reaches it first. Level 3. There was a time when worship wrecked her. She would drive home from church with tears she could not explain. A verse would land in the middle of a Tuesday, and she would have to sit down. And then one day it simply stopped happening. What is worse, she stopped noticing that it stopped. Hebrews 3 verse 13 calls this the deceitfulness of sin, hardening the heart day by day. Not a single dramatic fall. A slow and daily settling into something that eventually stops feeling wrong. Numbness is not the same as neutrality. It is not a resting place or a plateau in your walk with God. It is what happens when the spirit has been grieved enough times that the response mechanism goes quiet. Stay with that feeling of not feeling, because that is exactly the point. Do not reach for someone who walked away from the faith and lost everything visibly. This level belongs to the person still sitting in the building, still going through every motion, still feeling nothing. The worship set moves around them and nothing stirs inside. The sermon lands correctly, and something in them processes it like a report. This condition is not rest or recovery from a difficult season. This is the warning signal that conviction has gone quiet, and quiet conviction is a stopped heart. Here is what makes level 3 the hinge point of this entire list. You can feel completely numb and still look fully alive to every person around you. The absence of feeling is not peace. It is the evidence that something has already gone dark inside you. The 2 disciples walking to Emmaus were numb, they had given up, and they were walking away from everything. Jesus walked alongside them, opened the scriptures, and something began burning inside them that had been cold for days. The burn is still available. It has not been withdrawn from you. The question is whether you want to feel it badly enough to be honest about the fact that you stopped feeling anything. Level 4. He is in the building 3 times a week. He leads a small group, volunteers in the children's ministry, and greets people at the door on Sunday. He is one of the most useful people in the room. And privately, he knows that none of it is real anymore. Jesus said in Matthew 7 that people would stand before him and list everything they had done in his name. They prophesied, cast out demons, and did what looked from the outside like the work of God. And Jesus said, he never knew them. The activity does not create the relationship. And at level 4, the activity has quietly replaced it. The service schedule fills in for the prayer life. The small group fills in for the honest conversation with God that stopped happening years ago. The more useful you are in that building, the more this one is for you. This is not the nominal Christian who shows up twice a year and puts $1 in the offering. This is the elder, the worship leader, the ministry coordinator who everyone else points to as the example. Do not move off this level because the description sounds like a compliment. You can be the most useful person in the building and the most spiritually absent person in the room. And the building will keep running perfectly, and your soul will keep quietly hollowing out behind the schedule. Here is what makes level 4 the most dangerous entry on this entire list. The activity creates cover, and the cover makes it almost impossible for anyone to reach you. The person at level 4 is not in danger of leaving the church. They are in danger of running it while they are already gone. Jesus did not tell the Pharisees to do less. He told them to let the version of themselves die that had made the activity into a substitute for him. The resurrection is not reserved for people who have their spiritual lives visibly together. It is for the person who finally stops pretending they do. Level 4 does not end in burnout alone. It ends in the moment when what you have been carrying becomes too heavy to hide. Level 5. He was 23 when the gospel broke him open for the first time. He wept through his first real prayer. He could not stop talking about Jesus for 3 years straight. He is 41 now, and he reads the same Bible with the accuracy of an editor and the warmth of a stranger. Revelation 3 verse 16 is the most frightening letter Jesus ever sent to a church. Because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. He was not issuing a warning about a future possibility. He was describing a present condition that had already reached its conclusion. Level 5 is not someone who has rejected the gospel. It is someone who has mastered the language of the gospel while becoming completely immune to the power of it. They can defend the faith in an argument. They can teach the doctrine with precision. They can quote the verse on grace and feel absolutely nothing as the words leave their mouth. The person at level 5 does not believe they are at level 5, and that is exactly what level 5 is. This is not describing the skeptic or the backslider or the person who walked away from the church years ago. This is describing the theologian who lost the thread somewhere between the degree and the desk. Jesus addressed Revelation 3 to a church, not a bar. This is where the road that started at level 1 eventually arrives if nothing interrupts the descent. And here is the part that should stop you completely. The terrifying thing about a heart that has reached level 5 is that it does not feel cold. It feels settled. And the very next sentence Jesus wrote after that diagnosis was not a sentence of abandonment. He said he was standing at the door and knocking. He wrote that letter to the church. He had just threatened to spit out, and he was still knocking on their door. Level 5 is not the end of the story unless you decide it is. The knock at that door has not stopped. The only question remaining is whether anything inside you still wants to answer it. You sat in a service and felt nothing move inside you, and you called it enough. You kept the public face clean while the private life ran a separate direction, and you called it enough. You stopped feeling anything during worship and told yourself it was maturity, and you called it enough. You stayed busy in the building and let the activity stand in for the relationship, and you called it enough. You learned every answer and defended every doctrine, and called it enough even as the fire went completely out. 5 levels, 1 road, and the same quiet surrender at every turn. The road does not look dramatic from the inside. It looks like stability, faithfulness, and a very long list of things you have done for God. But Jesus addressed the most frightening letter in all of Revelation to a church that looked exactly like that. And then, at the end of the most devastating spiritual diagnosis in Scripture, he knocked. He was not knocking from inside the building. He was standing on the outside of the church he had founded, knocking to get back in. That is what lukewarmness does at its furthest reach. It does not destroy the building. It just removes Jesus from it. And all the while, the building keeps running. The programs continue, the volunteers show up, and nothing on the outside signals the problem. And nobody inside notices that he is gone. If any level in this video landed on you, do not scroll past that feeling. The discomfort you feel right now is not condemnation, it is the knock. Jesus is not finished with anyone at any level on this list, including the level that just described you. If this kind of truth is what you want in your feed, subscribe to Woke Faith We Go Here every week, and go back to the level that stopped you. Sit with it longer than feels comfortable. The knock you heard somewhere inside this video is still happening right now, outside the door of your actual life. Revelation 3:20 is not a children's memory verse about coming to faith for the first time. It is a rescue call sent to a church that had already quietly replaced him, and the door is still open.